Hello everyone. Today we're going to be working on Constitution again. This is the second part of the lecture, and we will be going deeper into the second Constitution of the United States, the one that is still today the law of the land. Let's recycle a little bit. We've talked about the Articles of Confederation as the first attempt to a constitution, and we discussed their, well, mainly its achievements and failures, and we saw that failures were, well, many more. This led many to believe that something had to be changed and modified towards within the articles. But as always, there was an event that pushed for the final decision to modify the articles, and this was an event that took place in Massachusetts called Shays Rebellion. You read about it in the text for last class, right? Mainly what we have here is Americans that were poor and they were rebelling against an unfair taxation. Yes, an unfair movement from the part of the state, Massachusetts state. Then you can read the details here in the PowerPoint and in your text. But the significance of the rebellion is that it was, as it says here, it was barely controlled. It was very difficult for the state government to control these men that were Americans and that were protesting and going against the government, basically rebelling and doing the same things that the colonists and the rebels had done against the British government. So this unrest led to as it says here, led many to believe that there was a need for a stronger central government and that the Articles of Confederation had to be modified. So there is a constitutional convention called to be met in Philadelphia just to modify the articles, but very quickly all the representatives from the rest of the states realized that there had to be a new set of laws, and the creation of a new government altogether had to be made. Today, we're not going to go into all the debates, but what do I want you to really have in mind? That the development and the creation of this constitution was made through lots of debates within the different interests that were represented there. We know the diversity of interest between the states in the north and in the south and the middle, the coastal towns and the inland cities. So the whole process is a game of debates and compromise. Compromise is a key word in American history. With such a diverse array of interests, compromise has always been the way to solve problems and to keep the unity. The moment when compromise was not possible anymore, that would be the moment of the Civil War in 1860, and this will be a turning point in American history. But so far, compromise, and check the meaning of the word if you are not sure about it, is the key word here. So this information is also in your text in Outline of American History, but let me make a point about it. If we compare the two constitutions, one of the big problems of the articles is that it was just one house body and that it had just one vote per state. So what are we going to do? Big debate, right? Because of course the states with the larger populations wanted to be, okay, representation should be based on population. The more people, the more representatives in Congress. While smaller states with few population would say, no, if we do that, states with fewer people would always be outvoted. and this would be not democratic at all. So the Great Compromise, yeah, what this is the beginning of the idea of let's have two houses. Of course, this was based on the British Parliament. They have two houses in the British Parliament, you know that. But this is something different because this is not the House of Commons and the House of Lords with where you see a difference in social and economic groups. This is different. This is the compromise. So they copy the idea of the two houses, but which was the aim? To keep everybody happy. So big states and smaller states can have the representation that is balanced, because in the Senate, equal representation will be the one used. Yeah. So each state, no matter how big or small you are, each state sends 2 senators to Congress, even today. While in the House of Representatives, the number of representatives is proportional to representation, and there is a census made every 10 years, and based on that census, you've got the number of representatives that you will be sending, or that your state will be sending. This is the same in Argentina. Yeah, we have the same system. That's why, and I'm going to show you this. Yes, here you have an idea or a good vision of the number of representatives per state. Yes, this is 2010 census, because the new one hadn't been issued yet. So notice how California, for example, is one of the biggest states. Texas, right? Notice how, when we say bigger, is bigger in population, right? The amount of people, because Alaska is very big as well as regards land, but very few people, so fewer representatives. Interestingly enough, and keep this in mind, for this same number is the one that is taken into account for the Electoral College. We're going to be talking about the Electoral College in a moment. Okay, so here you have another interesting showed of how many seats you have. Of course, you will always have more seats in the House of Representatives, much bigger, yeah, because population keeps growing, while senators it's a fixed number. And there you have also interesting differences between the terms. Yeah, the Senate is always the more conservative of the two houses, because their terms are longer, because they are fewer. So generally, senators are more conservative, and in the idea that they are always the same people, generally more respected than the representatives. All right. The other big debate: how are we going to count the slaves? Remember that the number of slaves in the South was very, very high. So of course, Southern states would always want to count all the slaves for representation in where? Not in the Senate, of course, but in the House of Representatives. Once it was decided that the House of Representatives would be based, would have proportional representation, of course, all the Southern states were asking for counting the slaves. As crazy, it sounds crazy, but it is not that crazy, because remember again that slavery was the basis of the socio-economic system of the South, and also remember the power that the planter elite had. So nothing is crazy when you have power. Of course, the Northern states were all against it, and they were saying, the first thing they said is, if they don't vote, why would they have to be represented? Now, which was the compromise? Again, this keyword, the 3/5 compromise. For every 5 slaves, 3 would be counted for representation. So you see how not crazy it was. it was quite a high amount, quite a high proportion that was going to be counted. This is key for us to understand the importance of slavery in American history. Why even today we see the racist anger and fury and cruelty against the black people, the black population, because this is not so long ago. Yes, this is the creation of the nation. It was already in the Constitution. It was accepted that slavery was part of our way of life, and this is also a very shameful beginning for many of the progressive thinkers today in America, but not for everyone. Now, we're going to be talking about the prologue in class, but just notice, this is the beginning, and if you now have a moment and you go to Google and you Google our preámbulo de la Constitución Argentina, it is almost the same. We, the people of the United States, nosotros, los representantes del pueblo argentino. So then in class we're going to compare both texts, but they are very similar. Okay, well, a little cartoon there for you to think about. And I would like to make a comment as regards the principles of the Constitution, right? The constitutional principles. Federalism, division of powers, and checks and balances. This is key to understand American history and American politics. You have this, in the PowerPoint here, you have the exact, very nice put definitions. So you read them from the PowerPoint later on. I'm going to make some comments about it. Remember that we are always trying to compare the problem that the Articles of Confederation posed and the solution that the Constitution gave. Yes, what was the problem with the Articles? Well, as we can see here, there was this refusal of the states to recognize that there was one central national government which should be powerful. Remember that with the Articles of Confederation, sovereignty was retained. Then check the meaning of sovereignty, soberanía, in the dictionary. So Articles of Confederation, as we said, it was a confederation where each of the states retained their sovereignty. Now, not anymore. This didn't work. The Constitution, the new one, is a federal system. It's the same as we have now in Argentina, where the power, it's not that we have an overall powerful central government, but the power is shared between the states and the national government. Now, this is part of what you read. What I have uploaded, it's here, and it's also posted in our Google Classroom, is specifically in which way. Yeah, it's not, we have certain powers that are enumerated and delegated by the states to Congress. You have them there on the screen. One of them, for example, is to declare war, right? The federal government can declare war. And most specifically, please write this down, Congress. I mean, generally what presidents do is they go and talk to Congress, but Congress is the one that declares war, because Congress is the people, the ones who are going to die. So, for example, coining money. Remember that with the Articles of Confederation, there was a different currency depending on the state. And there you have the whole list. Take a look at it on your own and then ask any questions necessary. Notice that the state governments on the right here have lots of rights that are reserved. They are residual. They are not delegated to the federal government. Remember, super important, let's remember, federal government in American English means the national government. They are synonyms. Whenever you see a news flash or whatever, the federal government means the national central government. While the state governments, of course, are each of the state. Notice how interesting what are the powers retained? For example, to regulate suffrage, You know that in the United States, each of the states can have its own technique or for voting. Some of them may be by computers, some others a paper ballot. Each state is different in this respect, and there have been some problems as regards this one. We're going to see in class. Education as well, so the textbooks are different, the syllabuses are different in each of the states, and this is also something important, we know, because we are teachers. So we got again, this I will always ask you to check it out and ask any questions. And we have concurrent powers, because notice how interesting, to tax. So federal government can have their tax, they can tax you, I mean the citizen, but you also have state taxation. So both of them can do that. And of course you have prohibited powers at the here as well, things that they cannot do, what the state cannot do. Remember that the Revolutionary War was fought to prevent the overuse of power, the tyranny of the man at the top, of whoever is at the top, to prevent tyranny. So that's why there are powers that are prohibited, things that these powers that the federal government cannot do, that the state government cannot do, and both of them. So I don't know, just look at these prohibited powers. Neither of them can grant titles of nobility. And Americans are very proud of this. There's no nobility in our country. So again, all questions welcome. Now, problem 2, how strong will the central government be? Yeah, this is even today a matter of controversy, but the Articles of Confederation, as we said, it was a very weak central government with no executive branch to carry out the will of the nation, of the National Congress, or the judiciary. There was no division of powers in the Articles of Confederation. So the solution of the Constitution is the division of powers, as you read, based on Montesquieu's ideas. Again, notice the same as with the Declaration of Independence, all these ideas are not created by the founding fathers. Yes, what they do is they are these practical laws in the readings and the thinkers and the political philosophers that had been thinking and writing for years by now, right? So that would be the idea of the division of powers, the 3 branches of government. Same as in Argentina, legislative, executive, and judiciary. Judiciary is the one we're going to use, the word, each with its own powers. But remember always the eternal fear all through American history that the executive would be too strong. Yes, this is echoes of George III. The solution, so that no power can be stronger than the other one, is the system of checks and balances. In Spanish, pesos y contrapesos. So this is the diagram for you, for us to talk about divisions of power. The idea of the 3 branches. And this one, this is also posted apart for you to see it in detail. This is the system of checks and balances by which each of the branches controls the other one. Yeah, then we're going to read it, you read it in detail, but just for you to have an idea, how can the president be controlled well, so that he doesn't become another George III? Well, Congress can impeach president, can impeach the president. This is an example of the checks and balances, right? But we also know that the president has, and here you can read it, he has ways to control the legislative branch so that it doesn't become the tyranny of the people, right? For example, here it says, the president can veto bills, the president can appeal to Congress with messages, and the idea is that for you to read them all, yes, and of course ask any necessary questions. So the last point I want to make is connected to the idea of the electoral college. The Constitution established that the president would be elected through an electoral college. Why? Electoral college means that when Americans vote, they don't vote directly for the president, although the ballot says, of course, the name of the president, but what they vote is for electors that then would go and vote themselves for the president. Of course, 99% of the times, these electors vote for the ones that everybody knows that you are voting for the elector that will vote for Trump, for example. This is an indirect democracy. And the big why this system, which it's controversial and many people disagree with it, but it's still there. What was the problem? The problem is the fear of the mob. Don't forget that this is the first experiment in people voting with very few property qualifications to vote. Remember that just to compare, in England you had to be a property owner to vote. Only by the, let's say, end of the 19th century, we will have voting rights for everyone, and not women, of course. So the idea was to have this controlling body between the mob, the people, and power. Then all this is in your PowerPoint. You read it on your own and you ask any question. So these are the principles, right, of the Constitution. Once the Constitution is finally finished, the convention that had been discussing this for months and months in Philadelphia finally gets to the end. The Constitution is passed, but in order to be accepted and to become the law of the land, the Constitution has to be ratified. This is the name of the process. And when we say ratified, it means that it has to be ratified, it has to be accepted by 9 out of the 13 states, right? It has to be approved in all those 9 states. Right, we have a picture, and the problem is that there were states that would not ratify it. Why? Because many of them feared that the government created by the new Constitution would be too powerful. Again, fear of tyranny. So there were debates all over the country, and you read this in your text as well. We had the federalist and anti-federalist for and against Constitution. Then you're going to read this with more time, but what I want you to remember is that there is political debate, people talking and discussing politics all along the new states. And the solution, because the problem is that if 9 states don't ratify the Constitution will never be enforced. So let me see, compromise. Again, the magical word. So what happened is that the agreement was that the Constitution was going to include a Bill of Rights. Okay, please attention here, because I know it's a lot of information. You can pause it and continue later, but listen to this very short explanation of the idea of an amendment. Remember, we said that the Constitution was finished. The founding fathers understood that for the Constitution to be effective, no word should be changed. It cannot be modified. And it has never been modified since these times. But they also understood that it had to be a document with space for adaptation to the new times, because they knew that this should be a document for the future. So what was the way in which the Constitution could be adapted? By means of amendment. An amendment is an addition to the Constitution, right? So the founding, within the Constitution, there is a clause that actually says, if there has to be some kind of addition in the future to the Constitution, it has to be an amendment. For an amendment to be passed, this is not here on the screen, but I'm telling you, for an amendment to be accepted and to be passed and added to the Constitution, one amendment, I mean, in any aspect that is will be needed in the future, we need 2/3 of Congress to agree. Very, very, very difficult. 2/3 of Congress, more than half of it, to agree to this addition, or a certain number of states, which was a very high number. I don't have it here, but then we can check. In any case, super difficult to get this amount of agreement in the US. That's why today we have very few amendments. I think we are in between 26 and 27 at the time. They will check properly. In all these years, one of them, for example, is the abolition of slavery. That is an amendment 13 in 1865. So imagine how difficult it is to get to an agreement to pass an amendment. Super difficult. Because the idea is this, that only very necessary adaptations should be included, and added at the end. Now, having said that, what happened is this, that because of the fight for ratification, the first 10 of these amendments are passed all together at the same time before ratification. Yes, so the first 10 amendments to the Constitution are the ones that are collectively known as the Bill of Rights. And this may ring a bell to you because it's the same name. The name is taken from the Bill of Rights of England, where we have freedom of speech, trial by jury. If you study English history, I'm sure you remember this. We're going to study this in detail. So that's why I attached the original wording. They are very short. All amendments are very short, all of them, because they just tackle issues that are very specific, but very important. We're going to be analyzing this in class. But the idea is for you to understand. Today, I need you to remember the process of an amendment, how an amendment is passed, because we're going to see it all through our course, and then the significance of these first amendments. All right. So that is all for today. Thank you very much for listening. Have a nice time, people. Bye-bye.